ClubPod.co, ClubPod.co, ClubPod.co.
Hi folks, this is another podcast for ClubPod.co, that's ClubPod.co. The other one I did earlier, I did 2 podcasts yesterday, and I think it was clipping. I haven't got the sound adjusted in this little record, it's a bit awkward. When I do a test, it says it's under the clipping zone, and then when I replay it back, it looks like it clips, so it's... My slightly more expensive record is much simpler. You can set that sound much easier. This is more guesswork. Anyway, today's a very, very simple marketing tip, and that's to use QR codes. That's QR codes. Now, QR codes are free. You can generate them on many, many websites. Now, you can add in things like your URL. If you want, you can do a phone number, anything. Anything is almost unlimited what you can add to a QR code. Now, why do a QR code? Now, first of all, if you go onto your iPhone, and it's been updated, I think in the last year, maybe in the last 2 years, you'll find that if you go to the photograph section, where you take a photograph, go to a QR code, and there'll be a yellow square, and it'll go round it, and it'll automatically scan it without you even having to do anything. It's on probably every single iPhone now. Now, if there's one thing there, if it doesn't work, in your phone you might have to switch on the QR settings. I suspect most it's turned on, but I think you might have to if it doesn't work. But then in the old days, not so long ago, you'd have to download an app for QR codes, but fortunately now, because it's built in, and I think it's the same for Android, I think it's built into those now, so you'll probably find QR codes will become more popular, because in the past it was a pain, because you could produce QR codes, and if they didn't have the app on the phone, well, you was wasting your time. Now, in my case, what I've done is I've used one of the link sites, Lincoln something, because it lists all my podcasts, shows such as Apple, Spotify and the rest. And this means that if somebody scans the QR code on the phone, it's rather than having to search for my podcast, they can just go through that list and press whichever service, and it should bring that up. So if they prefer to use Apple, boom, straight onto Apple. No searching, none of that nonsense, none of asking people to search out your podcast, because the truth is, even if they want to, a lot of people, if you tell me your podcast name, within 5 minutes, I'm dyslexic, so I'll forget everything you tell me anyway. But even with someone with good memory, they might forget the name of your podcast, or if they go search for it, another one might pop up. Now, the beauty of doing QR codes is you can post them on such as your Instagram feed. Now, normally, the only way you can add a link to your on Instagram, workable link, is in your profile. Sorry, the dogs are driving me nuts in the background. But with this, obviously, you can post the QR code and people can just scan it. So... And the others, you could add it to your videos and all sorts. And you can be quite creative. Now, one of the simplest things is to print them out on such as a business card. So if you was at such as, let's imagine you went to so is that the cat driving me nuts? If you was going to, say, a podcasting event, rather than going around saying, can you listen to my podcast, and spending an hour telling everyone what it is, and if it's noisy, they're not going to hear you correctly, whack out a business card, bum, 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 bum. And then people, all they'll do is scan that business card, and it'll bring up, as in my case, you could put any link you want, but I suggest doing it like a Lincoln link, and then it'll put them on. Now, if you use that link only on the QR code or whichever service, if you find a single service just for use that for that QR code, some of them will provide you with stats. Often they'll provide it free, and you have to pay a bit extra for more in-depth stats, or some you have to pay for the stats completely. But if it does provide stats, if you're bothered, some people aren't too bothered, but you can see how effective that QR code is, because if it said 1,000 people have gone on Lincoln, or whatever site you've got, 1,000 people have used that QR code. By the way, one thing, check and recheck the link, because sometimes you can find the QR code doesn't work correctly. You haven't typed in your URL or something. There's something you might have made a mistake, and there's nothing worse than them going out and having your business cards printed and then handing it out and finding no one can scan it. Just check it a few times, because I've heard even big businesses mess up like this. There's been businesses have actually put the wrong URL code in the QR code and printed it in major magazines, and suddenly everybody's scanning the wrong one, and that's cost them thousands upon thousands of pounds in advertising down the bin. There's also something else to remember. People can hack QR codes, and by this it's very simple. Let's say you've got your QR code on a poster in a bus stop. Well, people can come along, they can print out their own QR code and just glue it over the top of yours, and people won't know unless they get very close. They won't see. And the other things to think about is, if you put it on your car, which is a great idea, people can scan, you could have it big. Do it quite big, because I've seen people put very, very small QR codes on their vans. I saw one major company years ago, and I was the only one probably who knew what a QR code was in the UK at the time, and I went up to it, and it actually, even going directly up to the van, it wouldn't scan because it was just too small. So it was just a waste of printing money, that. So make them big enough to scan. And if it's on the car, make it as big as you can, because that way you can scan it at a distance instead of walking up. But yeah, the QR code's very free, and it's very simple. And just imagine all the places you can put it. You can just let your imagination go wild. Include it at the end or in a video on such as YouTube. And the advantage of doing it on YouTube is a lot of people might be watching the video on the laptop, and if it comes to the end and you say, oh, listen to my podcast, it means they can bring the phone out and scan it, boom, rather than search you out. Because I'll be honest, asking people to do search and things, you're going to lose a lot of people. Because a lot of people say, yeah, I'll listen to your show, and they won't, because it's just too much effort just typing it in with your phone. Now, like I said, doing a QR code, it's the easiest thing going, because they just lift out the phone, and it means that even if they've got an old iPhone, it should still work, or an Android phone. I think it should work on Android without downloading an app. Because going back, I've had an Android phone. I'm on iPhone now, but I've always been on Android, and I had the QR code apps on that years ago. But like I said, people didn't know what QR code was. And admittedly, as I keep saying, you might find that if you're in the UK or USA, they're less popular, but they're starting to take off. And one of the reasons they've been taking off is apps such as I forget what ones. There's a few trendy apps that include their own version of QR codes, so you can scan them to invite people. There's sort of it's the idea of them's getting more popular. But anyway, and you've seen more apps use them all the time, so people are sort of getting used to QR codes. In fact, my friend who I was with, she's not tech savvy, was in a shop and it said scan this code to see about the product, and she did. The only downside of this was, which I don't think the people selling the product thought about, was we was inside a shop and there was no reception for the internet because of all the electronics in there. It was just too bad a connection, so it didn't work. And these are the things you people, when they do QR codes, need to think about where you use them, because in the past people have put them, say, on the underground in London, where there was no, I mean, they might have put Wi-Fi in now, but at the time there was no Wi-Fi. So people were scanning the posters and simply couldn't get a signal, so it was a waste of time. Anyway, use QR codes, they're simple. And you can put them all, so you can put them on your pictures, include them. You can get quite creative where you put a QR code. I mean, if you're going to any events, you should really, if you've got business cards and you're handing them out, not having a QR code on there, say, because a lot will let you print things on both the front and back, so you could always put it on the back, just on its own, and link to anything you want. And it'll just save you hassle for people. People like easy options, and if they can just scan a QR code, it's simple. So it's free. Like I said, just go on in. There's millions of websites out there, and if you want to have more fancy ones, often you have to pay a bit, but it might be worth it. So that's a simple one, folks. ClubPod.co. ClubPod.co. Alright, folks. Hope this has been some use. This might have been the most simple marketing advice I'll ever give, and maybe the most effective. Alright then, bye.
ClubPod.co. ClubPod.co. ClubPod.co.